Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men In Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. All right, Tyler Gould, we just got done with a couple of hours with a good friend of ours, Keiffer Marino. Usually, I don't think our episode backstory starts with one night on a date with Tyler Gould in San Diego.
No, but I feel like more episodes should start that way, but yeah.
And we'll just throw it out there. If you're ever in San Diego and you need to talk a little bit about life and figure some things out, by all means, call my friend Tyler Gould and have some tacos.
Tacos are on me, man. Yeah, for sure.
So Keiffer's in an interesting place. He reaches out to you. You guys have a powerful conversation, and like in so many instances, that powerful conversation turns into, hey, get in the laboratory with us and Richest Men in Town. We push it out to the whole world. What is bouncing around in your head and heart after spending some time with Keiffer tonight?
Yeah, it was fun to see him when he was in town, and we were kind of talking about a lot of things that Keiffer's experiencing right now. He's getting ready to retire from the Navy, and he's got some transitions and some changes happening, and so I just felt like, man, there's a lot that it's always this selfish thing with me, right? Because I'm like immediately like, well, there's a lot I can learn here, so I got to get Keiffer to come on the podcast with us, and he didn't disappoint. The conversation went in some directions that I didn't think we would go to tonight, but it was, as we said at the end, it went exactly where it needed to go. And yeah. I loved it. I mean, I don't know what stood out to you tonight, but a couple things that you pointed out that Keiffer had said in the podcast. 2 questions. Who am I? And is that me? And I love sort of this introspection that took place in our conversation tonight.
Yeah, when I get straight up free therapy. There's a couple of times when, like, one point in the conversation, I actually stop you guys and say, "Hey, can you help me out here?
Yeah, let me give you a real world situation."
Yeah, no, and I think I thought that was powerful, and the advice that both you and Keiffer gave us. I mean, not advice, but just some of those thoughts that came out of those conversations, I think are gonna change some things for me. I really felt impact. We can relate to Keiffer. He's 27 years serving our country in the Navy, and he's making a change, right? So he's in this unknown. With the unknown comes fear, right? How can I prepare so that I can step into this and not be afraid? What does this mean for that idea of who am I, right? Identity. Yeah. Man, we get into some really, really cool things. And one of the key insights that I got from him at this stage in his life, I love where he's at.
Yeah.
Especially selfishly looking at, like, he's got some parenting things that he's learning across a wide range of ages. But just that idea of the journey.
Yeah.
Right. That idea of, man, there really is something to be said for stopping, looking around, acknowledging people, experiences, and maybe even smelling some roses. I thought that was valuable.
Yeah, I love that lesson that he taught us about sort of enjoying it a little bit more, right? And then I thought there was a lot of real good conversation around the topic of leadership as well. Leadership in our homes, right? And what that looks like, and how do we set aside pride, and how do we just continue on this path of progression and becoming better, and letting our family in on that as well, right? I love that conversation. It opened up some doors for me, and that I want to walk through and see what I can discover in my own quest for leadership in my family in particular.
Yeah. And I want to highlight, I just want to, I love what you shared. I always love what you shared, but just that getting clear in your role in the space that you're holding as a parent, as a leader, of what do we want people to experience with us?
Yeah.
Through the experience, and when that experience is over. And can you come up with and crystallize a short list of things, right? Your list was powerful. Our listeners are going to have different lists, but man,
sure.
it'd be great if you could walk through, okay, I'm going to walk through my day and people are going to walk away with this from me.
Yeah.
They're going to feel 1, 2, 3 short list. I thought that was a wonderful part of our time together. So.
Yeah, it was fun tonight, man. It's always fun to have a guest on. I mean, you called it in the beginning. He was episode 20. We're somewhere in the 130s, and it was fun to have him back. And you know, life doesn't stop. It just keeps on rolling. And in that role, lessons are being taught and lessons are being learned, we hope, right?
Yeah, and we mean it when we say we're not done with you. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So when we have an opportunity to have a conversation with you, you just know that conversation is gonna circle back. We understand there's a river running through it. There's a river running through where you're at there, Tyler, in your world and your kids and your relationship with Ricky, professionally, all of those things. And we're all on this river. And man, every once in a while, we got a chance to circle back and say, how's the journey been the last couple of years? Tonight was Keiffer's time. We're not done with him.
No way, right? Man. No way.
Who knows what that next chapter is going to look like? But to Keiffer, we do really sincerely mean it. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your service to our country. And we wish him the best of luck. I want to thank the family for giving him a couple of hours, because we cross time zones with Keiffer. We're hanging out late night Pacific time. He's talking from Eastern time zone, and it's even later. So he delivers, man. It's always an amazing opportunity to sit down and get better. And Tyler, I love the work that this podcast is doing in my own heart and in my own home. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. Keiffer, thank you to the listeners. Pull up a chair, grab some notes. I got pages from our time with Keiffer. Let's do something about it. Enjoy your time with Keiffer Marino, back again on the Richest Men in Town.
All right, Mike Freeman, tell me this. Answer me this question. What is your definition of a moral victory?
Oh, okay, hold on. You're talking to a guy who for probably 30, 35, maybe even 40 of my 47 years, all we had was moral victories. Right? Like in my fandom on the trophy shelf, there were no trophies. So I had to come up with things like garbage, like moral victories.
Okay.
To sleep at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, is this a way of thinking that you subscribe to?
Yeah,
moral victories.
I do think when in the moral victory file in my brain, I have this idea of direction, not perfection. Right? So like, for example, the Cubs overachieved the year before they won the World Series just by getting into the playoffs, and they lose to the Mets in 4 games. We get swept. Right? I walk away from that beating with some kind of moral victory, saying, well, we overachieved. Right?
Right. Yeah.
We overachieved. So therefore, it's that's a moral victory.
Yeah.
And the Mets then go on to represent the National League in the World Series, right? So like, yeah, there's been times when I've found peace, maybe some balm, some soothing balm in the words moral victory.
Okay. I had that thought today. Someone brought it up, and I just thought, I'm not 100% sure where I stand on that. You know?
Oh, now that my team has actually won a ring and a Lombardi, No, moral victories. Forget about that, man.
Garbage.
It's garbage. I want results.
Yeah.
Come to me with no moral victory, right?
I mean, I guess I can see it, right? Like you want to be able to, it's sort of like a building block, maybe. Maybe that's it, right?
In the process. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in the process. You'll chalk this up to experience and we'll build on that thing. So
which is interesting, right? Because you think experience is the great schoolmaster, right? We learn from experience, but like, you know, so PGA Championship, Brooks Koepka is coming up on the lead, and he's saying, "Oh, you won't see what you saw from me on Sunday in the Masters because I went back and I reviewed all that, and I'm not going to be that guy again."
Well, that's a bold statement.
We'll see, right?
Yeah.
How great would it be if we could all look in our lives and say that was not my best me, and I'm not going to do that again? But you know, sometimes I've been thinking about this, right? I've been thinking about, like, Kelly and I were driving the other day, right?
Yeah.
And she jokingly said something like, something came up and was like, "Ooh, that's a good question that we need to ask whoever is going to date our kids." And I was just like, I'm driving and I look at her and I'm like, will you ever leave Jesus? Will you ever walk away from the church, from your faith?
So let me just clarify. She said, what's a question that we should ask these people that are dating?
She mentioned one. She mentioned a situation, was like, that's a good question that we need to grab when we're talking to kids that are dating our kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of spun out and I'm driving and I'm like, oh man, like how can I make sure that whoever it is, like, they're not going to be perfect, but like, can we make sure they're not a quitter? Right? Like, what question or what can we learn about the people maybe dating our kids that will give me the peace and assurance as a father that they're not going to mail it in when it gets hard?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Kelly and I, we're celebrating 25 this next week. Some of that has been incredible. Some of that has been hard, but like, there's no quit in that girl.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no quit in her, like, I would love to boil it down to, like, what is it about your faith and that, almost like at a genetic level, where girl's not going to quit? And how can I make sure that the people that are going to be inserting themselves into my kids' lives have that same trait, right?
So what's the answer?
I don't know. I can't figure it out.
I don't think there is an answer, because I think like that idea of don't quit is born in this, you know, this multitude of experiences that you have, right? Both positive and negative. And it's how you react to the negative that spins you into another positive. And then you're in this space where you're like, I've experienced these things deep for myself. And at 21 or 22, when I met Ricky, if her dad would ask me that question, I would have said, absolutely, there's no quit. But who knows what the next 25 years we're going to throw in my face, right? So that's a tough thing.
And hey, define quit, right?
Right.
Kelly and I go out for dinner the other night, and I'm literally watching a husband and wife also out to dinner. She's on her phone, he's on his phone. And I'm like, that's quit. Like, it doesn't look like they quit, but they're quit. They're done. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you might be together. You might as well be done. Like, what's the point of this? And even to the table, bro takes the phone. And at the table, bro's on his phone.
Dude, maybe bro is texting his wife right there about, come on, cut him something. No, I get your point, dude. I totally get your point. I mean, I'm
going to cut him some slack, but it does bring this question to mind. You know, some people think, oh, I'd never quit. And they're mailing it in like they've kind of already have.
Yeah, you're right. I think the definition of quit, I don't know, man. I mean, because I think that, I think that when you're thinking that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm reading in between the lines here a little bit, you're thinking spiritually as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I'll be honest. There have been times where I have not quit, but I am barely hanging on, God. Right? Like I'm not quitting you, but man, it's hard and I'm barely hanging on here. Yeah. And he can work with that, right? He can work with barely hanging on.
Absolutely.
And see things through, because things are gonna get better. Good times are coming, right? Yeah. In the middle of this thing, it's not. I don't know if I don't know how your kids are doing, right? But like kids are dealing.
For sure. And
every once in a while you get a text like, hey, reach out to Grace or reach out to Abe. They're really struggling. And so when we reach out in the struggle, we're having these conversations and it's like, let's put things in perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Number one, this disappointment kind of hurts and we can sit in it for a little bit, but man, this is going to set you up. This setback is setting up my comeback, right?
Right.
And other people are dealing with things much, much heavier than this right now. Yeah. So let's keep things in perspective. Let's be okay with not okay. And then let's develop a plan and move forward. Right.
For sure. Yeah.
But no quit.
So is that then when they sit in it for a minute and they get up after a minute and brush themselves off and start taking those steps forward, is that a moral victory?
Maybe.
Right? Right. Yeah. Maybe. So Mike, maybe you just solved my conundrum about the moral victory just now.
I get, okay. So maybe the definition of a moral victory would be a loss, but how you respond to that situation sets you up for a real victory, right? Down the road.
Yeah.
And maybe to that question of like, hey, how can I assess whether somebody's going to enter into my kid's life and, not quit on the important things? Maybe that would be almost like David slaying Goliath. Well, what experiences have you had leading up to this? Yeah. Right. Talk to me about hard things that you've done. And like I talk like I got something to say about it, right? Like there's this interview and they got to pass my test. They don't have to pass my test. I'm going to look at my daughter. I'm going to look at my son. You're like, you love this person. Cool. This person make you happy. This person make you better. Cool. Let's do this.
Right. Yeah.
But that past experience, right? Past performance dictates future performance, right? If you've gone through some hard things, chances are that's telling me that moving forward, you'll have the ability to go through harder things.
I like it, man. So I like it. I agree with you.
Yeah, you just life coached me, man. You just walked me through some things, got me talking about some things.
That's right. I love it, man. I feel like I
would pay you $300 for that experience just now.
I would take your $300 and then I'd walk away with $300 and a different view on moral victories, man.
Well, hey, I'm excited about who we have on tonight. Right. We're going back. And here's the thing. We always say when they're with us, hey, we're not done. Yeah. Right? We have guests come on the program and then it's like, hey, we're not done. We'll do this again. And then the cool thing is things happen in the lives of people, right? It's a river running through things. And every once in a while we have an opportunity to circle back with someone and just say, hey, talk to me about where you're at now. Yeah. Talk to me about what's moving. Talk to me about what life is teaching you. And you recently had a conversation with one of our favorites, Mr. Keiffer Marino.
Yeah, Keiffer shot me a text a few weeks ago. He said, hey, I'm going to be in San Diego, for some training. Let's catch dinner. And so, you don't turn that down, right, Mike? You're like, let's do it.
Come on.
So we went, we had some dinner, we had some tacos, and I'm telling you, through the middle of the conversation, I told Keiffer, I'm like, well, why aren't we talking about this on the podcast? And he said, let's do it. So,
well, I'm going to kick this door in. And we're going to keep our word because we mean it. When we say we're not done with you, we mean it. So if you've been on the program, awesome. We're not done with you. And every once in a while, we hit you back up.
That's it, man. That's it.
On cue, Mr. Keiffer Marino, welcome back to the Richest Men in Town. How are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So it sounds like you and my boy Tyler Gould had a dinner date in San Diego.
We did. Man, Tyler's great, dude. He's always gracious enough to entertain me for,
Hopefully he picked it up. Hopefully he picked it up.
heck no. He offered, but he took me some swanky Mexican joint down there in Old Town. So
It was good stuff. I actually went back, Keiffer, with Ricky. So we went back.
oh, good.
Yeah, it was good. So
It was great. And always like it is every time, Mike, every time I get into San Diego, Tyler makes it a point to make some time for me. And I think he recognizes that, man, I can't miss this appointment with Keiffer. He needs that therapy. So
no, it's the opposite, man. I love spending time with Keiffer. It's fun and we laugh a lot but there's a lot of serious stuff that's discussed and it's funny, Keiffer. So he's in the middle of, or not in the middle of, he's getting to the tail end of some things right now and some big changes. So I don't want to spoil that. We'll talk about that in the podcast. But it's funny. I was having a conversation the other night with another friend of ours that we all know, Ashton Buswell, and we were talking about getting old, and he said, there's different levels of old. There's there's your kids are getting out of elementary school. There's your kids are in high school. And then there's your kids are in college and your kids are married. And he kind of went through the whole thing. And he was kind of giving me a hard time about being old because I got 3 in college. But so I thought it was funny. I was telling him, I'm like, I feel like I'm 25. The only thing that reminds me I'm not is when my kids remind me I'm 25. I'm not 25, right? I'll be like, hey, I feel like I'm 25. Like, and you're not. All right. So let's get that straight, right?
Well, you got me beat, Tyler, because I hang out with my 11-year-old and I was like, there's not a whole lot separating me from, from that 11-year-old. So,
well, I tell you,
I feel the pain. Isn't it interesting? Like, I feel great. I'm like with you. I mean, I still probably act too much like I'm in my 20s. The knees are a little crickety, and I really feel like when I see like small children like fall on their knees, I get that sympathy pain. Like it almost like you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Absolutely.
I'm like a walking WebMD. I can watch sports, and when an injury happens, I can assess and instantly be like, that's what this is.
Yeah, that patella tendon.
That's a meniscus right there. Not a full ACL. That's a meniscus.
That's right. Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, hey, Keiffer, I'm excited. Looking forward to connecting with you because we've kind of gone. So you were episode 20.
20, yeah.
And wow. You guys that's almost like OG founding fathers of Richest Men In Town, right? Because we're up in the 130s now, but you joined us back October 5th, 2020. And I'm looking forward to even just like catching up and like, what is life looking like now in 2023, a couple years down the road, right? So thank you so much for catching up with Tyler. And Tyler, thank you so much for getting this guy back on the program. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I am as well. And so it's going to be a good time tonight, man. And here's the thing, like, it's funny because we have these conversations, and Keiffer, you and I talk about this every once in a while. It's like we have sort of these like foundational conversations where we talk about the things that have brought us to where we are or made us who we are. And it's almost like that conversation is almost like we've reached a spot, right? We've gone through these things and now we're at this spot, when the reality is life just keeps going, and things just keep coming and difficulties come and joys come and all of this stuff, no matter what stage we're at. So, and that's why I love the idea of getting back together with you, Keiffer, and kind of just, talking about where we're at, the three of us, and what we've been learning.
Well, I'll tell you, My life is not the same today as it was 3 years ago, well, 2.5 years ago now. It is definitely changed, and not for the worse necessarily, but I'm going through some. Uh, I feel like the cockroach in Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. If you're familiar with that book,
Yeah, yeah.
The guy goes to bed one day, wakes up, and they don't say he's a roach, but you can infer the Kafka's language that he's a big old bug, and
Right.
that is misunderstood. Right? Can't communicate. He's hiding away. As he tries to figure out how to live this new existence. And that's kind of been me this last couple of years. I'm literally going through this major shift in my life and uh, how I live this life that I've lived that's completely different than what I've done before. And I think I told you, Tyler, and Mike, you may not be aware of it. August 1st, is my retirement ceremony from the Navy, and preparing for that ceremony is a lot like preparing to have a limb amputated. I don't know what it's like to have a limb amputated, but I know that I need these things, right? I haven't lived without my hands and my appendages, and the idea of now getting ready to go into part of my life where I'm going to have to close the door to something that's been a part of my entire adult life so far. It's well, I tell you, I'm not gonna say it's tested my faith so much as it's tested the challenge that if ye are prepared, ye shall not fear. I am constantly putting that to the challenge, and I'm hungry to be as prepared as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
What's that emotional journey been like of because you've been in the Navy for how long now?
By the time I retire, almost 27 years. So I'll be just shy of 27 years.
27 years, that's a long time, right? It's like your identity almost to a certain degree, right?
That's totally right.
Yeah. And
totally. I've defined. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're hanging that you're not necessarily hanging it up, but you're entering a new chapter. And I feel like that transition thing has got to be an interesting thought, the thoughts that go into that.
It is. I'll tell you that one of the saving graces for me is my foundation and my faith. When I'm working with youth, especially young men, I always challenge them to, when they ask, hey, who are you? I always challenge them to maybe frame their responses in a certain way, to say, well, I am, I'm a cook, I'm a mechanic, you're all these things, but those things can change. One thing that doesn't have to change is your faith. So that has been the one constant thread that has taken me from where I've been for so long and where I plan to be in the near future. So part of my identity, or a lot of my identity, is my faith.
Yeah.
And thank God for that, because if I didn't have that faith, I feel like I'd be lost. Like,
how has faith helped in the process of retiring? Because I think some people will look at that and go, well, you have faith and you have career, right? And these things are wholly separate. So how do those things commingle, and how does that look like? And how has faith helped in the process of this transition?
Well, like I said, I believe wholeheartedly that one should not go to the Lord and ask for his help unless I've done everything I can do first, right? I think we all know that lesson, that, do everything that you can do first. Lean on the Lord, as well, but, don't just drop it all on it's not his life to live, it's my life to live.
Right.
These are my lessons I have to learn. I can lean on him just like a child leans on a parent. But having the faith that if I'm prepared, that I don't need to fear. And that's tough. But if I didn't have my faith, I wouldn't really have that perspective, I think, at all.
Yeah.
And it has been hugely helpful to me and my family as we get ready to hang up this career that's provided for us for so long, and then navigate the waters of civilian life and a whole new dialect of language that I'm not really familiar with, and learning how to play nice with regular folks. So,
well, I think it's that unknown, right? Like Tyler was saying, 27 years wraps up in your identity. And I love that analogy of almost like of losing a limb, right? Of having that drastic of a change. And I think it actually kind of ties in, Tyler, to what we were talking about while we had Keiffer in the waiting room, is just this idea of prior experience setting up future experience.
Mm-hmm,
right.
yeah.
So when you come into this idea, when you come into this new chapter, uncharted waters, right? For a Navy guy, that's gotta be a little unnerving. But then you can look back and say, well, hold on, right? He was there to help me through this. He was there to help me through this other thing. And it may be unsettling to begin with, but the idea that you are more than a Navy man.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I was telling Tyler that, I have a lot of things I need to do between now and the time that I'm actually out of the Navy, and it can get really overwhelming. And I just remember, I constantly go back to this young man that I watched a documentary on, and I think I might have mentioned this in my previous podcast because it really means a lot to me. But Kyle Maynard, he was a quadruple congenital amputee. You may have heard of him. The guy's amazing, right? He has no arms or legs, and he always wants to challenge himself to do these amazing things. And one of the things he did was climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and he did that unassisted. So basically, he's crawling on what remnants of limbs he has. I mean, literally almost on his stomach, crawling up the side of this mountain, and multiple times felt like he just kept looking up and seeing how much further he had to go. And at some point along this journey up the side of this mountain, he's a Christian. He said he just felt the words, "Hey, stop looking up in front of you and how far you have left to go. Take a look behind you and see how far you've come." And I really appreciate that counsel, because I look back on almost 27 years and where I was as a young 20-year-old who was first joining the Navy, and or 21, sorry, and who I am today. Boy, I am nowhere close to the same person. Maybe more. I still have that boyish, I hate to use the word devilish tendencies. You know what I mean? Like mischievousness.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that's inherent in my genes more than this, and just a knack for getting in trouble. But I've looked at how many things I've done and all the toll gates I've passed through, and boy, there's so much more there than there is, I think, in front of me still.
Yeah, so. Man, that's a powerful lesson, though, right? And we talk about this all the time on the podcast. This idea of the importance of remembering, and I think it's a big deal, because we've, and I'm guilty of this. Like, I'll find myself in a new situation and immediately I'm doubting my own abilities, right? I'm like, shoot, this is over my head, or I'm not prepared, or everybody else is in a better spot than I am. Like, right. And you start to question all these things, but when we step back, and I've had to do this, like literally, like remind myself, like, Tyler, you've done A, you've done B, you've done C, you've done D. You can do this thing because those things were possible, right? And so I love that idea of like just being aware of the miracles that have happened in your life, and knowing like that more is possible. right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, doing all those things, I still struggle with the imposter syndrome,
Oh,
right? I mean,
100%. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out like becoming a civilian and working in the civilian world and in corporations I'm not familiar with products I'm not familiar with. And even though I feel very confident that I could come in and learn something very quickly and I could get on board very quickly, I've years and years and years of leadership uh, and management and product. I mean, I have all these skills, right? I'm still going to walk in the room and feel like an imposter, like a poser.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I got to get over that.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. You got to get over that, right? Because I think that there's a force, because I marvel at this truth. I mean, Tyler's dropping this idea, this thought of like, who am I to do this thing? And then we have to somehow remind ourselves of the things that we have done. And it's almost like, why is it that we immediately that internal script goes to, you're an imposter here, right? You're an imposter here. You can't do this thing here, right? And I think when life gives us these hard challenges, I remember having a conversation with somebody, and I love this. I'm never going to forget this conversation. I'm sitting down with this brother who lost his wife, and he looks at me and says, man, we're Tony and Kelly. Like, I don't even know what Tony is without Kelly. Right? And that's to the extreme, right? We're talking about you're having an amazing ending to an amazing career in the Navy, but to a certain extent, you can kind of feel that same question, right? Like, I don't even know who I am without. And here's the amazing thing. My friend Tony has responded. He has stepped up. He's actually been of incredible service to other people and found purpose in his life, right? Without his wife by his side. And he's redefining who Tony is. But going back to those labels that matter, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we hit labels that don't matter. There's lots of ways to make a buck. In Heavenly Father's eyes, it's not necessarily your profession or your career that matters, that would be a label that matters. But I think of the values we talked about your first time on the podcast, right? Those matter, right? When we start talking about how we make a buck, that matters. What we do, not necessarily, but in the overall scheme of things, from Heavenly Father's perspective, how did you go about doing it? Can you wear a label like honest? Can you wear a label like integrity and courage, right? I think those are the things that are going to matter in the end. And there's power in going through some things and stepping in and being like, okay, I was this, I'm stepping into this new thing, but everything that matters about me, I'm taking into this new chapter, into this new opportunity.
Yeah. One of the biggest regrets I have, and I think a lot of people probably have this, is I look back on my life, man, I wish I should have stopped and smelled the roses. Because now in this part of my life, I feel like I have been always trying to chase the next thing, and I get to the thing, and then now I'm chasing the next thing without stopping for a second and smelling the roses, right? Really appreciating the incredible blessings that I've had. And there's been struggles too, of course, but I can choose to focus on the hardships, which a lot of people do, or I can choose to focus on the blessings that I've had. And so going forward, guys, I've had this thought a lot here in the last 6-7 months that I need to just enjoy today as much as I possibly can. And I remember listening to probably your most recent guest talking about make it a point to do something fun. Throw the clubs in the car, right?
Wonder, yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I absolutely want to do that. Right? I absolutely want to be that person. And I have a couple of people in my life. Tyler, you're one of them. Where, and I say it's therapy, but I know that I can sit down with and just get a good old belly laugh. You know, that is like, that's like comfort food, man. That's good for the soul.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Amen.
and then our lives are so busy and hectic, and as men, I mean, I have very little time for friends. My identity is largely defined by who I am as a husband and a father, and as a professional in the workforce. How I, you know, how I administer the demands of my responsibilities at church, and my other extracurricular activities. So I feel like, boy, who am I, right? Or is that me? There's been a sense of loss there too, right? As we've gone through these changes, these metamorphoses in our life. I feel like I'm in a perpetual state of being in a sarcophagus, where it's like I'm in and out of this thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I love that.
Who am I, and is that me? Are two powerful questions.
Yeah, I love that.
Descartes, I think Descartes, you know, I think therefore I am, was really, you know, what gave birth to Western philosophy. If I got the right name there.
Yeah, and that's the wallpaper on my phone right now. Mindset, belief, action, pyramid, right? At the bottom is that mindset leads to belief, leads to actions. Tyler and I are reading a book right now, and we're looking at, you know, possibly doing some things with the Richest Men In Town community, and just that idea of resource allocation. Yeah. Right. Like, am I putting the limited resources that I do have? They are finite. I've got 24 hours, right? I don't have unlimited time. We know tomorrow's not promised. What am I doing to allocate those things strategically with some intention in my life?
That's tough.
Right. Well, it's interesting though, when Keiffer, when you started, you said, you know, when I'm working with young men in particular, I have this conversation with them, and you say, okay, you're a mechanic, you're a cook, you're a whatever, but here's the things that matter. And the thing that's interesting is, like, the three of us, we know that deep within our souls, right? But as we get, I'm 48 years old, and life has only gotten more busy, right? And
isn't it crazy?
Right. Yeah. And there's more distractions, and there's more pulls from every side. And so I appreciate your comments of, I had to make sure that career and faith are intertwined, right? And for me, that is, I can totally relate to that, because, and Mike, we have this conversation a lot about identity, right? It's this idea of just remembering what the big picture is, how we fit into that big picture, and what really matters at the end of it, right? I mean, I've had some profound experiences where I've felt like I've got some really important direction on what matters in life, and it's not what I thought it was when I was 28 or 38 even.
No doubt.
Well, and I don't know this, because I agree. The three of us know these things. But if you were to hang out with us, would you see it? Right? Like, sometimes I feel like this pressure. I have this podcast called The Richest Men In Town, and I have to correct. Somebody told me, oh yeah, we were talking about, and the podcast came up, and somebody's like, yeah, Mike has this podcast talking about his rich life. And I stopped the person and said, no. Mike and Tyler have a podcast on a quest for the rich life.
That's it.
Talking to people who don't have it all figured out, but have some things to teach us. But there is this pressure to, like, man, of all people, the three of us, we need to be modeling this, and we need to be living it strategically. And when you talk about strategy, I love having a military guy on, right? When you talk about strategy, those are those are implemented, strategies are implemented with daily, if not like hourly, by the minute decisions.
It's true.
Are we making
Yeah.
the right decisions that line up with the strategy? Because the second that we don't, you got a different strategy.
Well, and I think, and let me clarify for a second, all right? Because I think the reality is this: like, I know this truth with all that I am. Okay, for 18 hours of a day, that truth becomes kind of hazy. And when I lay myself down at night and I have some moments of quiet, I remember, okay, Tyler, here's where you went off the rails a little bit, and where you allowed things to get fuzzy and hazy, and you got to remember, right? So it's that constant, like, let's dig up, let's clean off the windshield so we can see exactly what this is all about, because those are truths that I know. And there's a lot of truths that I know that I allow myself to forget because life becomes what life is. Right.
And I think that some of those truths you've learned the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And probably a lot of mine, I certainly have learned the hard way. And they become so deeply embedded into your personal schema, right? And the lens through which you view life.
Yeah.
All those lessons are kind of are the glass that you're looking at life through. And it becomes harder and harder and harder to assign a set of words, I think, to those lessons, right?
Yeah.
You just operate almost automatically on them. And I look at my son, I'm thinking, boy, how do I phrase this in a way that I know it to be true? I know, I understand it. How do I phrase it in a way that he might understand it as an 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 16, 17-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was an idiot at 17. I don't think I listened to anything anybody told me when I was 17. So, which it was to my detriment. I should have.
Yeah.
I should have.
I would love to, I know, Keiffer, this is your time, but man, one of the things that I'm struggling with, so I'm going to throw this out to you guys. You mentioned your role as a father. One of these things I'm mentioning is like how to gracefully have and hold high expectations for my children without riding my children. Like for example,
lay it out.
Let's get real. Let's get real, right?
Yeah, please.
Let's get real. Mother's Day. My ward, my church starts at 11:30.
Okay.
Mother's Day, get up, do some special things for Kelly for breakfast. Abe sleeps in. We go to church. Abe walks into church at 11:30, hugs his mom, wishes her a happy Mother's Day, and sits in the pew with her, right? I come up, give him a hug, and in his ear, I said, Mother's Day greeting in the pew at 11:30 on Mother's Day? And then we sit down and commence to have worship service. Right? Like, why do I got to do that? Why do I got to do that? Right? He knows. Or maybe I could give him a look or something. Or maybe at a different time in a different place, I can have that conversation. But why do I got to be like that?
Mike, that's a great question.
He's asking himself that same question right now. He's like, why does Dad have to be like that, man?
Yeah. Like, I want to have the high expectations. I want to raise a man. I want to raise a man who knows and understands and values. I know he does. And he's 18, right? So like, acknowledge that he's 18 years old and he wants to sleep in on his son, like whatever. But my fear is I'm fighting who I was at 18. There's that.
Yeah.
And I'm not acknowledging what I have in my 18-year-old. It's 100% deficit mindset. I'm coming at him like I'm fearful that the 50% of genes that are in me are going to raise their head at any given moment. And this great kid that I've raised will all of a sudden become who I was when I was 18. And that's
God help
what I'm
us.
battling.
Mike, it's not what you said. And this is my problem, Tyler. I know we talked about this. It's not what you said, Mike. It was the delivery. It's how you said it. I constantly have to dig my foot out of my mouth. It's not what I said. It's usually how I said it. And there's nothing wrong with what you said, in my opinion. You're a father, right? You're raising a man. And in the world that our young men are growing up in, I think it's even more important that we teach them just how to be aware and about how to be good husbands, right? And the best way our young men learn how to be good husbands is by how they treat their moms.
Yeah.
So it's not what you said, Mike. I think it's how you said it, and I think that's the enduring challenge for knuckleheads like me, who I got all these great ideas, but I don't always know how to spit them out the right way, and sometimes they come off as crass and cantankerous sometimes.
I've been all those things.
I definitely have a delivery. I have a delivery problem as well sometimes, Keiffer. I'm fully guilty of that. We've talked about that for sure. But here's a couple of things that I'm trying to implement in my, because we're all in the same boat. I mean, Keiffer's still got some young ones at home, but you got a daughter that's married and in college, so there's all kinds of he's on all the scales, right? So I'm trying to like implement these two things, right? And the first one, they're both for me mostly. It's time and place. Like my instinct a lot of times is if when it goes down, I'm in it right there, and I want to be in it right there, right? That's my pull. Like that's where I want to be. I'm trying to learn this of now is probably not the best time for me to get into it, because I'm not in the right spot. Maybe they're not in the right spot. Right. There's that. The second thing I'm trying, that especially when I have 3 in college and they're out of my grasp, it's just this idea of trust and how I try to play that is the conversations that we have on the phone, where it's just the weekly check-ins, like, hey, how's it going? And, or they call to complain about whatever. It's just this idea of, can I sprinkle some seeds and then watch them grow through the next conversation? So there's this idea, like, for me, it's like, and you're right there with me, Mike, and Keiffer too. When they're outside of your home, it's like, you just have to sort of let go and let trust in the process that the groundwork that you laid is going to be true. And here's the thing, Mike. Abe sleeping in at your house on Mother's Day. And I've said this before, when your kids leave on a mission or to college and they come home, they're a guest. That's not like they're your kid that's at home sleeping in his messy bedroom, right? And so I have to remind myself of that too. When my kids come home, I'm like, these are adults that are adulting, and I'm trying to put some influence in there, but I find it with adults, influencing has become a much more gentle process for me.
Yeah.
I just have to say those few words and let them take them. Whereas in a kid, I would say, hey, you're not sleeping until 11:30. It's freaking Mother's Day. You're going to get up, you're going to make your mom breakfast. You're going to do your thing, man. But as an adult, I'm like,
I need to come up with the look. I need to come up with the ojo. Like, hey, just like give them the look, right? Come up with a sign or something where I don't have to, because I'm with you, time and place. And I butchered that my whole life. Right?
Like I said, my natural instinct is to step in it the second it starts on fire. Like,
you're a scrapper. Right. You want to go to fight. You want to fight.
That's right.
So, and I like to fight too much. I had an experience not too long ago with my son, and he didn't have a good. It was a bat, at bat or whatever. But we were at the baseball field, and he came off the field and was clearly visibly, irritated, upset.
Yeah.
And my instinct is, I'm gonna go over there and comfort the guy, right? Say, hey, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? But I he wasn't having it. He didn't want to talk to me. Didn't want to look at me. He told me not to stop talking to me, that sort of thing. And before, I would have probably handled that a different way, right? Because he showed, to me, I thought it was a little bit of disrespect.
Sure.
But I didn't pull out the handle. I was like, I want to try something different. Okay. Yeah. I looked visibly disappointed, but I didn't pull out the handle like I normally would have. I'm gonna try something different. So later after the game, I told him, I was like, I didn't really appreciate the way you talked to me from the dugout. I was just there trying to encourage you and help you. And he goes, your timing. All right, just like we're talking about. Just wait a little bit, right? I want to jump right in, and maybe I should just set back, and let the sort of somebody threw a rock in the pond, right?
Right.
Instead of trying to tamp down the ripples, just let the ripples kind of fade out themselves, and then I can kind of wade in the water and see how things are going.
But I actually like that. I like that analogy. That mental model helps me, right?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
When I think dads, we want to fix.
We want to fix.
And like a lot of times, recently having a conversation with one of my kids, and it's just like we're gonna allow for some okay to not be okay right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's hard. That's hard to do. Yeah. I mean, Mike could talk about children. I tell you, I got kids in all different kind of phases of their testimonies and trying to figure out who they are. Of course, I got two. One's going to be a sophomore. One's going to be a freshman. I got my son who's going to be. My two daughters are going to be in high school, and then of course I got a daughter who's married and in college. I got a son who's coming up and going to be a 7th grader, and I have a soon-to-be 5th grade daughter, and so the full spectrum. And guys, every day I wake up, I think I'm losing the battle. I'm losing the battle. I don't know how to compete with everything that's coming at them from the school and from social media, from all this, this DEI.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a constant bombardment on my kids, and constantly battling these ideas that they're being influenced by all day long. And then I get them for a couple of hours in the afternoon, and I've got to kind of, do damage control. I feel like I'm in crisiscleanup.org every day, you know what I mean? And then my kid is the map, and I've got all these little, fires and floods and stuff I've got to put out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No,
that makes
absolutely
that makes a ton of sense. But I think that we can find comfort in knowing that not every voice hits with the same impact. And I think that even our own voices at different stages in their life are going to hit with different impact. But I find incredible comfort in knowing that if I come into a place with love and with some guidance from the Holy Ghost, those things that I'm going to pour in are going to have some staying power. Maybe not land right when I'm delivering it, but that promise of the gift of the Holy Ghost will bring all things to their remembrance. I lean heavily on that hey, when you're in your wilderness, there's going to be a place where, man, I'm hoping that I've said something, Mom said something that you're going to be able to grab onto when you need it, And I've been on record saying I wish my kid wilderness, I wish my kid's failure, I wish my kid not
on Mother's Day at 11:30 for crying out loud,
right? as we're going through it, and I'm like, I do wish this for them, right? This is for their good, but man, when we're going through it, and it's like, can a kid get a break?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
can a kid get a like? It would be great, God, if my kid could get a break right now.
I
You
got
know,
to
and
I got to
sometimes
tell
the
you.
breaks come.
Yeah, yeah. I got to tell you though, I recently, I've had this thought, and Keiffer, you and I talked about this over dinner. It's that I'm learning how to parent a little different, right? I have 4 kids. 3 of them, I think I parented one way. And I got to tell you, I thought I could have written a book, man. And now I'm changing some things. I'm trying to do things differently. And here's the thought that I keep having when I want to fix something recently. It has been, what are you going to fix about yourself? Right. And I think that's been my approach lately is, okay, I'm not seeing what I want here. And maybe I need to change something about me in order to convey the correct message, or the message in a way that it will be received. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel the same way. And I get that. I think those feelings are even stronger when my wife reminds me that I'm not behaving, in a way that's not, I should be better. Right. So
right.
My initial instinct is, and to my wife's defense, she defends the kids. Right. When I go after them, she'll, a lot of times she takes her side, and probably justifiably so. It irks me to no end, though. Like, it ticks me off. Okay, just let me get it out, and then scold me, off to the side. Don't do it right in front of the kids. But after all the bloviating and the blowing off of steam, I will pray, and I'm like, I constantly am seeking to understand ways to be better. Right. Yeah. I love Hinckley because that was one of the most powerful messages he had throughout his presidency, was to just encourage us to try every day just to be a little better. And I just try to be a little better, and I seek that counsel, and it is incremental. Like it's almost like the government and the way they pass laws. So it might be, it's just these incremental changes, and then hopefully over the course of a decade or 2 decades, I've gotten where I need to get on this particular policy, right? I got 1,000 other policies I need to get to. But when it comes to my kids, just like you, it's a struggle. I mean, I always go back to this though. As long as my kids look back on their life, and they might say, yeah, Dad was hard on me, but my dad loved me fiercely. And if my kids know that, then I'll chalk that up as a win.
Yeah.
So,
and I like that. We had our guest Will Barnett a couple episodes ago, right? And one of the things that I loved that he said, I am who I am right now.
Yeah.
Right. With that caveat that I can be something different tomorrow. And I love that idea. And I think there's a couple things that I want my kids to understand is, there's maybe 3 things, right? I want them to understand with you, I loved them fiercely, that I was dedicated to my faith because that faith is real.
Yes, it is.
And 3, that my dad was willing to change, right? And I think if I can convey those things, I think that's the win, right? That we know that progression is that we can continue to progress. You reference Hinckley and just being a little bit better. If that is part of our DNA, and we're modeling that, sometimes I through my personal study or my personal spiritual experiences, I have these aha moments where I'm like, okay, this thing needs to become part of who I am.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I walk out of that room and tell everybody, hey, you guys, I want you to hear this thing that I discovered that I think is going to make a difference in me. And I think I need to be better about that, right? About
absolutely
sharing that, because the desire to find better is deep inside of me, and I'm digging for that. But when I feel like I stumble across something that is impactful and meaningful, I don't necessarily walk out and say, hey, everybody, let me tell you about an experience that I just had that's pushing me in a different direction.
So I just want to throw a highlighter.
way.
I just want to throw a highlighter on those three things, right, Tyler? Because I love those. That you love them fiercely, that you were firm in that faith because that faith is truth, and that you can change. And I think that is so powerful, because I'm telling you, gentlemen, if I had a nickel for every time I hugged my kids, right? Family prayer, hug my kids. Kelly and I retire to the bedroom to get ready to go to bed. She closed the door and she looks at me and says, well, that could have been handled differently. I would be a rich man. And so I think that there is something to be said for being transparent in the process of that better, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, like, I love that thought of better. Better is what lights me up. We watched A Man Called Otto last night for family dinner.
I haven't seen it, but okay.
Oh, powerful.
Yeah.
And when it was over, it was like, man, who wants to be better right now? Like that is that, because again, it really gets into what Keiffer was talking about earlier, just this idea of like, the magic is now. The roses are now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This journey is the beautiful thing. It's not the destination. Like eventually it's going to be like, man, that destination was fun, but man, it was the trip. It was being there.
That's it.
And so many times, you know, Keiffer, like I'm feeling you, because so many times it's not till you've done the thing 7, 8, 9 times, you checked off the box and you're at the mountain peak and you're starting to realize it's not about the summits. Yeah. It's about the climb, and it's about the people, and it's about the things that I've learned about myself. And it is about the stumble. It is about all of these other things, you know, and just that, man.
Miley Cyrus wrote a song called The Climb. That's right. That's exactly what it was about.
That's our first Miley Cyrus reference in the town.
Yeah, but I love that, Tyler. If man, how about that, right? If you could be intentional and say, kids, I'm going to mess this up 1,000,000 times, but when I'm done and I'm gone, how cool would it be if you walked around and think my dad loved us? My dad believed in God and Jesus Christ, and his faith was firm. And by golly, I saw that man change.
Yeah.
I need to be better about, I mean, totally everything that you guys just said, spot on. My problem, and I think maybe you said this, Tyler, my problem is I can sit there and self-reflect and analyze all day long and say, yep, I got to do this, got to do this, got to do better on that. I got to, you know, the list is long, guys.
Right.
My problem is, and I try to find the right word for this, and I can always come back to the same word. It's prideful. I won't outwardly come out and admit that, hey guys, I need to work on this, and this, right? Because there's a part of me that said that's an expression of weakness, right? Mm-hmm. I need, as a dad, as a father, as a husband, I got to have it all together all the time.
Yeah.
And so I have to get over that.
Yeah.
Like I have to be willing to show a little vulnerability to my family, because I mean I am vulnerable. Like I don't let them know it. Because I think I just feel this incessant need to be strong for them always.
Yeah.
And if my armor starts weakening, what does that mean for my family? So I don't go out there and say, well, dad's struggling with this, and dad needs to work on this, and dad's got a temper problem, and dad's got this, and then
right.
You know, all those things. I just keep that all to myself. And you know, Laura asked me the other day, we were we were discussing something, and we got into a little disagreement of sorts. And she goes, Keiffer, who do you have to talk to? I'm like, what do you mean, who do I have to talk to? She goes, if you need to talk to somebody, who do you talk to? It's like, I don't. I don't talk to
the
any.
problem of dudes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't talk to anybody. I don't dump my problems
Yeah.
because I know every dude out there is going through the same, quagmire,
Yeah.
as I am, right? We're trudging through this slosh every day, trying to keep one foot in front of us. And I was like, they don't need to hear my problems. But, Tyler, when we sit down and talk, I'm like, I don't feel like, I feel like, I'm venting, right? Maybe taking some burden off.
Yeah.
But when I walk away, I don't feel like you've taken that burden on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's not, I mean, it's not like it's it's not EMC squared where there's a direct transfer of energy, right? It's like,
right.
I feel better. I think you feel better because
Yeah.
you got to listen to me kind of bloviate a little bit. And so it's just a problem. I got to get past it, but I don't feel comfortable necessarily in this forum. I know there's going to be lots of people who are listening to this, and that's fine. But generally speaking, on a day-to-day basis, I don't talk about what's going on up here and in here.
Yeah.
So,
Well, can I dig into this a little bit? Because I love this. I love that always on thought, right? How can I be always on and people watching me or looking at me for leadership and guidance and be trying to figure things out at the same time, right? There's this verse in 1 Corinthians 14, verse 8. And again, glad we got a military guy on the call because this is battlefield, right? For if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself to the battle? So like
Bingo.
as men, as leaders, as whether that's professional, spiritual, whatever, in our homes, how can we have this balance of I'm figuring things out and I'm working on me, and have when the call comes, everyone looks and it's a certain call coming from mom and dad.
Yeah.
Because that is like, where do we have these safe quarters where almost like in a war room where I can close the doors and I can talk to folks and figure it out and get to a place where it's locked in. This is the call. And then those doors open and it's go time.
That's right.
Mike, I feel like I love this discussion because that's a difficult thing. But I think if within the walls of our home, right, there's this constant conversation of the spiritual and eternal foundation of what we're building on. I think if that's the underpinnings of all of our discussions, it lends itself naturally to this idea of I need to make some course corrections, right? Because our entire purpose in life, right, is to prepare to meet God, right? We're here to prepare to meet God, which in that statement says you need to be changing, right, throughout this entire time. And so I think if we're as a core group in the walls of our own homes, we're having this discussion about things of eternal nature and things of spiritual importance, we can say, hey, you know what? These are the things that as a family, we identify as the most important things for all of us. And because of that, we're all going to measure ourselves against those things, right? And in that measurement process, I'm going to say to you, Sydney, here's where I see some things where maybe we need to make some adjustments. And at the same time, as your father, here's some things that I'm going to do, right? And I think those kind of honest discussions are huge. They're important, and I think they can be had without giving up that position of leadership, because we think, back to your point, Keiffer, and I feel the same way. I identify with what you said, which is I have to be on. Like, if everyone else is scared about what's happening, I have to look them in the eye and go, we can do this, even though I might be crying inside. Right.
Yeah.
Like, there's that whole thing. But I think throughout, and this is just me, I'm spitballing here. Right. So, but this is just me thinking out loud that if the things of a spiritual nature are discussed on a regular basis within the war room of our homes, then we're all talking about change, right? The 4-star general is talking about, how can I become a better tactician, right? And his soldiers are saying, how can I become better soldiers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love that.
Tyler, I was, it's funny, as I'm just recalling our conversations we had for dinner. Mike, I really wish we could, get you in the
FaceTime Mike in there next time, man.
That's right. So this idea of leading, and I talked to you a little bit about this. I've had to make some mental shifts here. The problem with leading is I can't always see the person that I'm leading, right? I could lose the person that I'm leading. I could, I'm in front, I'm leading, I'm showing away. If I'm trying to frame this in a way that I'm gonna draw some distinctions here. We talk about leading people, right? We're assuming they're going to follow. Okay. If I get behind the person and I push them, okay, I push them along, there's potential that they push back, right? Or they hit the brakes, right? And there's no movement. But I like the Navy terminology, right? Like two ships. Instead of a ship leading a ship or a ship pushing a ship like a tug, we call it, coming alongside, giving some stick and rudder, right? So now,
I love this analogy. Yeah,
I can guide, right, without leading or pushing. I can guide a little bit. So this has been a little bit of a change in my mental process here in the last couple of months, and it's been hard. Okay, it's not easy to make that shift, but I feel like I've been a little bit more successful, guys, by trying to be a guide, like giving my kids some stick and rudder and my family some stick and rudder, without trying to push them or lead them necessarily. So it's been interesting. And Tennyson had, there was an alarm that went off in the school, like a panic alarm, and the whole school shuts down. The cops get called. It's a active shooter alarm, right? And there was no active shooter. It was an accidental alarm, but it went off twice. And Tennyson texted me, and he goes, "Man, get me out of school, right? I can't believe this." And I texted back, I'm like, "Son, this is an opportunity for you to be a leader." I was like, tap into your priesthood power and find words of comfort for people who are there. When there's things that go down like this, the world needs leaders. There's not enough of us. And I'm saying this, I'm like, man, I just need to comfort my kid, okay? And tell them everything's going to be okay. But then I sent the text. The next thing I know, I was like, God, I should just comfort him. But no, I thought that was a teaching moment. And for him to say, all right, here I am. I have the priesthood. I have, I need to use this to bless people's lives. I don't know if that was the right thing to do, or maybe it was too soon. Maybe I should have taken another tack and just comfort. But I just, at that moment, I was like, here's an opportunity for me to guide my kid and help him understand who he is and the power that he has.
What I love about that, though, is that, and I love the whole stick and rudder thing. We talked about that at dinner, and I love that. I think that Tennyson has had opportunity to see dad apply those things, right, in the home, in callings and everything else, and then to be able to say, okay, now here's your chance to do just what I've done, right? I think is a cool opportunity, and I think that as a young person, sometimes you want that arm around you to say it's all going to be okay, but I think sometimes even more powerful is someone to say, you know what, I believe that you can handle this. You know, I mean, that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal.
I think too. I love that response, by the way. I think that was an inspired response.
I
and
do
I think
too.
he'll never forget that text. And
Absolutely.
I think that's just a cool thing. But I mean, to teach the principle of, hey, it's almost like as we look at the life of the Savior and we look at when all the world around him was in commotion, he just saw this as an opportunity to glorify God. Right?
Yeah.
People are coming and saying, my daughter's sick. Yeah, we got this. Let's do this. And they go, it's too late. No, it's not. Watch this. Right. And I think that there's just a cool, if we can, in our children's minds and in their lives, if we can help them see challenges as opportunities.
Yeah.
I think that there's something powerful about that. Again, we've quoted it a million times, but Rudyard Kipling's if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, right? That is one of the principles that we want to teach our children. Can we keep our heads? And can we see these things as an opportunity, and even better, an opportunity to not save the day, but to lead? And I love that. I love that analogy, to lead alongside. You're not going to be like, and I got this. Here's an opportunity, and I'm going to storm up the mountain and look back, and there's no one behind you.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to come along and help other people realize the capacity that they have, their own potential, and say, no, together, this is going to be a cool opportunity to do some cool things. Let's see what happens. He's never going to forget that, Keiffer. I think that was a cool thing.
I don't know. And another, I don't know, Mike, have you read any Khalil Gibran?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite books, The Prophet. It's just stacked with timeless wisdom, and there's a section in the book The Prophet. It's called On Children, and I've always appreciated this because it basically models what we feel as we share a faith, members of our faith, that our children are on loan to us. They're not from us, but come through us, right? And I have to recognize that my kids, although I feel like I have a stamp of ownership on them, they're not really mine, right? They're something greater than that, and I have to do my best to prepare them. I feel like it's on me, right, to prepare them for this crazy world that they're entering. And I know every generation says that, oh, this is the world's worst generation, right? Every generation goes through that. But I really think that we have challenges today that the world's never seen before, and our youth are entering a world full of challenges that we could never have imagined would have been, around 20 years ago. Tennyson asked me the other day, he asked me the other day about what life was like when I was a kid. Because he complains about not being able to go outside, or his friends don't want to go outside because they're too busy playing Fortnite. They always hang around inside. They always want to play video games. They're always connected. And I told him, I was like, we didn't do that when I was a kid. We were outside. We were connecting with nature. We were hanging out. We were fighting. We were roughhousing. We were getting in trouble. We were doing all kinds of things. You know what I mean? And if we didn't have cell phones, it was a different world. But we turned out all right. And I feel like, as much as I try to teach my kids about the dangers of the world they're getting into, I'm constantly reminded that they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. The principles of teaching correct, the principle of teaching correct principles, and then hoping and expecting them to govern themselves is constantly echoed in my mind. Like, I constantly go back to that and have to, again, feel like if I prepare them, I shouldn't fear.
It's funny you say that, Keiffer, because as you're talking about that, I'm Mike, I'm thinking back to your experience in the pew, right? And you said, I was worried I was thinking about my own 18-year-old self. And it's that whole principle that Keiffer just taught right there, right? Which is are we operating out of fear? Or are we operating out of faith, right? It's that, trust versus, because, I have that same thought sometimes, like, am I acting in a way that is, modeling the negative influences I've had in my life, or am I operating in a way that is,
but
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but as you're saying that, I'm thinking of your second thing. First was time and place, second was trust.
Yeah.
And I think that trust is two-way. Trust that they are better than us.
100%. Yes.
Right. And no one, I work in the kid business.
Yeah.
That idea of adults saying, wait till you're an adult, wait till you're an adult, wait till you're an adult for it to get hard. No one's saying that to kids anymore because it's hard to be a kid right now. Right.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Absolutely.
So like that's a true thing, but they are prepared, right? There's that hymn, there's that line in the hymn, as thy days may demand, so thy succor shall be.
Yeah.
Like life has a way of preparing you over time for the burden that you will carry, right? A pregnant woman doesn't just go boom to 9 months and now you got an 8-pound baby inside them. Over time, they get the strength to bear the burden that is that process. And I think that life is coming down on that kid with some things, but that load is actually building strength and capacity to do some unreal things. So trust that they're different, and trust that God knows what they're up against, and their grace will be different than the grace that's allotted to them. The compensatory blessings that are given to them are going to be different than maybe what was given to us. We made it, right? We survived. But the things we were talking about was like station wagons without seatbelts, right? We're not talking about some of the things that, and the game has changed. Yeah. It's gone from physical to spiritual. It's gone from physical to mental health, right? We played till the lights came on, and then mom would come out and yell, time to come home. And it's like, all right, see you guys later. Let's do it again tomorrow. And it looks a little different, but different isn't bad. And we should still be on the edge of our seat to look at what these folks are going to do. Right. I mean, I think that there's something powerful there. I think that our adversary, the enemy, understands the game. And I think that kind of going to what Keiffer was saying, like, we don't have people, that's concerning to me.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have people to talk to, right? To connect with. So I finally read Make Your Bed by McCraven.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've had so many guests on this podcast talk about that show. It's like, okay, I'm gonna read this book. And they shares this story of 7 sticks, right? This idea of like, you take 1 stick, you break it easily. Yeah. You bundle 7 together and you try to break it. It's impossible. Yeah. Right. And I think that there's an intentional force at play trying to get us alone.
100%.
So that we will be broken, or we can be broken.
And you think about our kids and that process of them being alone. I mean, they have never been more alone under the disguise that they've never been more connected. Right. Because the connection is not sitting in a room or on a Zoom call like we are discussing real things. The connection is images of someone's best life at a snapshot moment, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes comparison and self-doubt and self-loathing and all these other things that come with that.
And comparison is a thief of joy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Dr. Carol Wirtz hooked me up with a quote. So, guest of the program, she shared this. I got to find out what book she shared this with, but check this out. The people we surround ourselves with either raise or lower our standards. They either help us to become the best version of ourselves or encourage us to become lesser versions of ourselves. We become like our friends. No man becomes great on his own. No woman becomes great on her own. The people around them help to make them great. We all need people in our lives who raise our standards, remind us of our essential purpose, and challenge us to become the best versions of ourselves. That idea
Wow.
of going it alone is that's a fool's plan.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
should model that. We should have people, right? We should have a town. We should have the ability to sit down and have Tyler buy us some tacos and break some things down, because we walk away stronger. We walk away from that process stronger, having made sense, made some meaning through the process of hanging out with folks that help us be our best selves.
Yeah. It's not all doom and gloom, brother. It is.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, there's hope, right? And there's man, if we just wake up in the morning and think, and I do this, it's a new day, right? Thank God I'm here today. I can step forward and say, all right, today I'm going to try not to do this. I'm going to try not to make my wife angry at me, make her laugh. That's always good thing. And then I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do the best job I can. And then I'm going to come home and I'm going to be available for my kids. Might even make dinner. I can't stand doing dishes, but I'll do them. Everybody knows that I'm doing them because I make a big scene about it. But I do it. But to your point, and then to go back to your point about the burdens that we bear. I'm grateful. I thank God I don't have other people's problems, because you are exactly right. The life that I've lived has prepared me perfectly to bear the burdens that I have. I sit in church or I go to work and I hear about the problems other people have. I'm like, man, I don't know how I would handle that, how I'd process that. I mean, I have situations right now in my life where I'm looking at the best of two kind of bad situations, and I'm finding the positive, right? The glass is still half full, doesn't matter how bad life gets. That's the true challenge, is can you find a silver lining when you're at the bottom of the barrel, or when you feel like the worst of the worst is happening to you? That kind of, Tyler, you know a little bit about this, and
Mm-hmm.
it just becomes, okay, yeah, there is something good. There is a positive out there, and grabbing onto that and allowing that to be the focus of moving forward. And hopefully that means a savior is there, right? That part of that positive is there, right? The savior is included in that focus. It always seems like, again, I go back to Hinckley. He said multiple times, hey, it might seem like it's bad, but it's okay. Everything's going to be all right. Things are going to be okay. What a great perspective. The guy who knew that we have everything to live for, right? We have everything to look forward to. If we can just get past our short little blip, of tomorrow or next week or what's happening 2 months from now. Again, go back to what we talked about earlier about just slowing down and being happy for what we have right now in the moment, as opposed to always seeking and grabbing for the next thing. That's been my biggest Achilles heel, and I'm going forward because I've spent so much time away from my family on deployments. Gone away from them, not able to communicate, not able to see them, not hear their voices. That was one of the main reasons why I decided to make not the transition. This is a new terminology I heard for retiring from the military. I'm not transitioning, I'm progressing. So I was like, man, I really like that, because I feel like progressing, it's an improvement, right? I'm going to be better after I leave the Navy, which for a long time, I just think I was going to do like this lateral, I'm leaving one thing, I'm coming in here, maybe even taking a step down because of the poser and imposter syndrome. Right. But for them, it's like, nope, it's progression, right? So I've got to mentally trick myself to think that. And it really is a mental game all the time, isn't it? It's a constant mental game to find different lenses to view your life, to give you more clarity. So two thoughts as I listen to you, Keiffer. The first is actually Bruce Beagle, former guest to the program, and he gets in the habit of thanking God ahead of time before the thing has even happened, right? Because everything will work out,
but in prayer, just giving thanks to God for how he's going to do it. Like I dig that idea of like faith. I have faith that this is going to work out. And I just want to thank you ahead of time for the way that this is going to happen. And
I
then,
have not done that. I need to do that.
And that's a crazy thought, because that's like surrender, right?
Yeah.
That's like,
I
I'll
love that.
accept
It's like
whatever it is. Yeah.
How are you going to do
cool.
this? Right. How are you going to do this? And maybe I'm an instrument, maybe other people are an instrument, but how are you going to do this? And then when we're at the bottom, McCraven says to change the world, be your very best in the darkest moments. And I think that is a cool thought, right? When it's dark, what do we reach for when we're hurting? Right? Do we look around and say, whoa, this is really dark? And again, back to your conversation that you had with your son, maybe this dark moment is my opportunity to be my very best. And maybe, just maybe, in that process, we can change the world, right? People like us, George Bailey's, average guys, when the chips are down, what does Mike do? And I can tell you right now, there's huge room for improvement, because I am really good when it's really good. When it's bad, that's when I could use that tempered steel. I could use the hammering, right? I could use this is the opportunity, Mike, for you to be at your very best. Do something amazing right now. Anybody can do it when it's sunny. Can you do something amazing right now when it's dark?
Well, and that's what I like about Keiffer. You're talking about some of the things you're going through and finding that silver lining, right? And that positive. I mean, one of the things that we talk about a lot on this podcast is the idea of modeling, right? That leadership is best. And that really is that stick and rudder idea, right? That we're modeling those principles. But man, for your kids to see a difficult situation, that you're able to say, here's the positives that we're going to take out of this, and here's how we're going to incorporate the Savior into this, and this is going to be the way through. I mean, you talk about like crazy modeling, because at some point, down the road, like years and years, when Keiffer's a grandpa, and you're in your rocker on the front porch, that your kids are going to be going through something hard, and one of your kids is going to say, here's exactly how we're going to do this. We're going to focus on this thing. We're going to incorporate the Savior into that. This is going to be the positive, and that's how we're going to get through it. And that's because the stick and rudder, right? That principle was applied to them. And I just love it, right? I think like that's, this discussion for me, it's like, this is the therapy, right? This is the $300 I'd spend with you guys.
How great would it be if our posterity looks back and say, oh, Grandpa Mike always turned to obedience.
Yeah.
He always started with love God with all that he has, love his neighbor as himself.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of to your second point, Tyler.
Yeah.
Man, he was firm in the faith. Faith mattered to him. And when his chips got down, he turned to, how can I be obedient?
Yeah. Yeah. Woo. I love it. I think, look, there's so much like, here's what I love about the conversation, because Mike, you're kind of you're beating yourself up a little bit about a conversation you had in a pew, but I know Mike, who does it right 99% of the time. Right. So that's a good thing. Keiffer said, well,
hey, I'll take 99, because Keiffer, your kid's playing baseball when really I'll take 3 out of 10. Yeah,
33%. You're Hall of Famer.
That's it.
Keiffer, you and I joke, and you'll tell me, oh yeah, I lost my junk about this or whatever, and we laugh about it. But what I love about it is the Keiffer that I know is the Keiffer that is finding the positive and incorporating the Savior into that, and that's the nuggets that we want to draw out of that, right? I mean, I'm glad that the three of us can laugh at some of the stupid things we do and say. But what I know from about you two is that there's things that I've written down today that are going to be put into action, right? And that's the whole point of this. So,
I think the whole point. I think when
Yeah.
we wrestle with what does God expect from us?
yeah,
Think about that question, right? I think that's
Yeah.
a powerful question.
Yeah.
What does he expect from us? And there is something to be said for loving, obviously, and striving.
yeah, amen.
Right?
Absolutely.
Are we striving to follow the example of Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
Are we striving to share that love with other people through word and deed? Ideally, deed, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sometimes words are easy, but deeds and like actually serving and loving and those kinds of things. I think that's President Nelson talks about that cycle of love. Man, when we get that figured out and we love God with everything we got, an abundance of love is available to us to share with folks around us.
I heard recently, and it's so true that our kids will never know how much we love them until they have their own child.
yeah,
And it's unfortunate you have to wait so long for them to really have that understanding. But I'm looking forward to that day. And and in talking about love, and I'll share this here. One of my biggest regrets as a father has been this inability to connect with my daughters. So I feel like I get along really well with my son. And Tyler, we talked about our sons and how I'm his dad and he's my son. We have that paternal offspring kind of relationship, but there's also a friendship. You know what I mean? We pal around. We like the same music. We kind of have the same sense of humor, and I'm gonna miss that like terribly when he leaves. So I know that my son fully understands that I love him and I'm there for him, but I feel like I've just missed the boat on my daughters. I don't know the rules, right? And how to connect with them in a way, in that really deep, fundamental way. I don't have daddy's girls, right? I don't. And I see other dads who have that. My girls they're great. I know they love me, but again, talk about comparing. I'm like, man, did I mess up somewhere? Like I look from sitting on the stand. I look out in church in the congregation, and I'll see a daughter snuggled up in her dad's shoulder, or dad with his arm around his daughter. And I'm thinking, man, my girls, they like sit as far away. It seems like this is as far away from me as they can. It's probably me just imagining it, but I feel like I maybe missed the boat somewhere, and part of that is, trauma. Trying to give space and not understanding again some of the rules and the other is just maybe ignorance, just not not knowing. So what do you guys got for me?
Honestly, as you're saying that, like the thought that I had was I just think about like Will Barnett's comment of I am what I am right now.
Yeah.
And the ability to change that. And I feel like, I've got 3 girls and they're all 3 totally different.
Yeah.
But the one thing I know that they appreciate is just the effort, and it's funny because I've been in that spot too, where I'm like, oh geez, like I haven't put enough energy over here. But what I've learned in my experience is it's never too late to dump some energy into that, and it changes quick. So I think, I know what you're about. And the cool thing is your kids know what you're about, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they know that. And I think that the ability to switch that is totally possible and doable. Now, will they cuddle up to you at church? I can't promise you that. I think that's a personality thing. I have some girls that are all about that. Some of my daughters in summers is like, Dad, give me some space, man.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess the first step to recovery is like admitting there's a problem. So
yeah,
I got that part. So.
Yeah, I think so much of this rich life that we're trying to build is the show up. The way just by the show up, and then even letting hey, I'm here. What I'm about to say is probably not going to follow those rules. I don't know the rules, right? I don't care about the rules. I care about you. And my heart says, I need to be here right now. Right? We do that. And even like we were talking earlier, letting them in on that process.
Yeah.
I think because if you think about it, and this is just on my heart and maybe it doesn't even apply to the situation, but we all need someone to pick us up. I'm thinking of the triumphal entry of Jesus Christ into the city of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
I think that was a tender mercy of God because Jesus Christ was about to go through the hardest thing anyone will ever go through. And maybe, just maybe, fulfill some prophecy and have 100,000 people chanting Hosanna. Might just be a pick-me-up. And then when you go into the Garden of Gethsemane and an angel comes, there are no rules there, right? What do you say to the Savior in the Garden of Gethsemane as he's going through their own suffer, right? We're all going to go through personal Gethsemanes. I think so much of it to get us through it is, can somebody just show up? I think Henry B. Eyring shows the example, right? His dad was sick in the hospital, dying, and I think Spencer W. Kimball just comes in and sits, and doesn't even say anything, and he's like, "Okay, we good?" And he leaves. And I think so much of life is just can we put our stuff aside and show up in our kids' corner and say, "I'm here. I'm here. I'm not on my phone."
Right.
I am.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right?
I think too, like that, just Keiffer, you joke, you said, well, the first step is admitting that you have a problem. But honestly, I think the fact that that's on your mind is a cool thing, right? Because I think to me, that's that's raw inspiration, it's like you're having those thoughts, man. And the funny thing is, Mike, I love what you just said, because I think that I just think that sometimes it's just, and I've been with Gwendolyn lately, my youngest, it's like I've been going out of my way to just every time I'm in the same room, I walk over and I grab her. And sometimes it's like get in. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's it's accepted, but I'm with you. I want them to know, because Dad does all these things for me. I have clothes, I have a nice house, I have all these things, but I want them to know that I also know because Dad says it and Dad shows it and Dad, means it. And I think, and I
leave no doubt, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's flood it.
But hey, I gotta share this because it's come up a couple of times in my thoughts, and I just need to share this because Tyler, I love when several episodes ago, man, I think you were talking about how we're not doing a good job of selling adulthood.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so many times you and Ricky would counsel together and you would get unified, and then you would come in and stuff would be okay. And it would be a unified front of, we got this.
Yeah.
Right. And the kids didn't necessarily see behind the scenes that process of getting to that place. And I think I just think it's important, as we are talking about older kids, that we do, because we talked about the importance of counseling together about spiritual things. And I think so many times we want to shield our kids from
100%
that process, and we want to come in and everything's cool, and it gives them this impression that as an adult everything's cool because mom and dad were always cool.
Yeah.
And I love that lesson that you and Ricky have kind of discovered, is the ability to let them in a little bit where appropriate.
Yeah.
When maybe things aren't cool and there's some things to figure out, but we can figure things out and we can do hard things. And I think that so many times we want to shield that.
Yeah.
We just want to be able to say, and boom, it's all going to work out.
100%.
Versus like, no, there's some things will work out, but let's show you the process of getting to that place. I think it's popped into my head a couple of times in the conversation. I just want to make sure that our listeners hear that for whatever reason.
Yeah, Mike, that's a great point. And I think, and I've mentioned this to Tyler, that sometimes sometimes the win isn't necessarily, how did I phrase that? I remember talking about sometimes we take the wins when they come, and sometimes that's the only win that there's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that, you get them to that point, or that cross that goal line, and that's the end of the game, right? Then there's nothing else that you can do for in this case we're talking about kids.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what I said. Maybe you might want to cut this part out of the program. It was there
because we started talking before you came on. We started talking about moral victories. And I think that so many times we came to this realization just in conversations that there are things. Sometimes the moral victory is getting up off the ground, right?
Yeah.
And committing to do it again and to come back at them. And I think that I think that it's important as we're raising, as we're having conversations with those kids, that as things don't work out, there's no quit. Right?
Yeah.
No doubt.
There is no quit, and we get up.
Yeah, I think going into our conversation tonight, I was leaning towards there's no such thing as moral victories. Now, after we've had this conversation tonight, I feel like I was absolutely wrong, and I appreciate the conversation, because there is that. I mean, I just love, going back to Keiffer, your comments about stick and rudder, right? I just love the idea of, our kids, as much as we want them to think, like, at times, as my kids got older, there's a different level of transparency with my kids now, right? But
yeah,
when they were younger, it was like I wanted them to think like, hey, there are no waves in this pool. Like, we are just on glass all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
But I think that there's, even though that was the perception I wanted to give them, they understood there was waves in the pool, and I think that they understood that mom and dad are still making headway even with the waves in the pool.
Uh-oh.
You know what I mean? And so I think, like, there's so much.
What happened? Oh, there we go.
When I go back to that moral victory idea, I love, Mike, what you said. Like, well, I know this much. I can get up and I can dust myself off and I can take a step forward. And I think with Keiffer, with your example of I'm finding the positive and I'm figuring out that's going to be the focus. I mean, that's like, to me, like, that's the essence. So that's what I want my kids. Like, if I could sit them down and say, hey, here's the lessons I need you to get out of life, I think I'd just press play and say, listen to Mike and Keiffer tonight.
I think it's funny because Keiffer thinks he's coming in to share a little bit about his life, but really Keiffer's coming in to help work on Mike Freeman and Tyler Gould.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Absolutely.
So we've got our guests thinking, okay, cool. I'll come in and give some update. There's some exciting things happening. And Keiffer, I'm excited. that you're a little uncertain about that next chapter and that next progression and all of the feels that are coming, the fear and the preparation, all of those things, because for 27 years you've served this country and you've answered the call every time. And I have no doubt that you will answer this call. And I have no doubt that in a couple we'll hang out and you'll be on to that next adventure, and it'll be all that you need it to be, right? I have no doubt about that.
I have no doubt.
What you've given to me tonight, what this conversation has given to me tonight as a dad, as a husband, as a professional, right? As somebody who's trying to be certain in their call and at the same time figuring things out.
Yeah.
It's priceless, man. It's priceless. So
it really is the classic bait and switch, Mike. I mean, if you really had to define it, it's the classic bait and switch. We tell Keiffer to come in and we'll talk about some things. And
it was total schemer. I remember having the conversation. You're like, man, I hung out with Keiffer and he's in a cool place and he's got some things. And it's like, fantastic. We need some things. Get him in here.
Yeah, that's right.
I had no idea what I was going to talk about. I was like, okay. I started writing some things down. I'm like, oh gosh, where's this going to go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to talk about anything too personal, but that always,
that's always
just throw it out the window. Of course, it's going to be personal.
But you know what?
I think
it went, to me, honestly, it went exactly where it needed to go. Yeah.
And funny how that works out.
That's the cool thing about conversations with friends. When you're vulnerable and you're talking about things that are important, I think it goes where it's supposed to go. And man, Keiffer, I love you, man. I love you. I appreciate you.
I love you too, Tyler, man. I appreciate your friendship, and I'm glad I have you in my life, man.
Well, I feel exactly the same, and I'm sure Mike will echo that well.
It's weird. It's weird because I haven't had the personal connections or the history with you, but the things that we have shared have bonded our hearts together as well, man. I'd go to war with you, shoulder to shoulder. And I love that about this. Nothing else is more important than this one life that we have, right? And the lessons that I'm taking away from our time together tonight, literally I've got a path that I walk from my car to my office and it's strewn with rose bushes. And every once in a while, I'm like, there really is an opportunity to stop here and smell roses. Like that phrase actually means something, right?
It does, and you won't regret it.
Yeah, and I have this quote that I've been big on lately, and it's from Ian Thomas. It says this: "And every day the world will drag you by the hand, yelling, 'This is important, and this is important.' And this is important. You need to worry about this and this and this. And each day, it's up to you to yank your hand back, put it on your heart, and say, no, this is what's important." And when I heard that quote, I immediately thought of my friend Tyler Gould and our project called Richest Men In Town and friends like Keiffer Marino. This is important, gentlemen. And Keiffer, I love you. I applaud you. Congratulations. This is one heck of a celebration for you and for your family, right? 27 years. You think about what that looks like across the landscape of your life. And there were probably some times where it's like, maybe it's time to do something different. In 27 years, you said, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting my country. I'm not quitting this branch of service. I'm not quitting the people around me, and we're better for it. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that, man. I've enjoyed the time that you guys have given me to be on this awesome podcast. And yeah, you know, this means something, right? This opportunity for all these men and sometimes women. I think had some women on the program, but it's therapy. It's needed. I mean, there's for this opportunity for men to discuss what's on our hearts and our minds, to put it out there and to see what kind of nuggets of wisdom and inspiration we can get from each other, and maybe heal each other a little bit.
Yeah.
And
your wife's question was an inspired one, right? Keiffer, who do you talk to? That's an inspired question.
Well, hopefully on that list now you can say, I talked to Mike and Tyler. Man,
absolutely.
That's what I like to talk to. But hey, Keiffer, I appreciate you. It's funny because this is your second time with us, and I feel like we could have talked another 2 hours tonight. You know? I mean, I really do. And I always love, spending time with you when you're here in San Diego, and this is a treat to have you here with Mike on the podcast again. And
absolutely.
And, I got to tell you, we'll probably do it again sometime. We'll probably do it again sometime.
Right. Well, it's going to be a whirlwind in the next couple of years. So I'll have to let these stored up.
All right, man. Hey, man, we love you. Get some rest. I know it's late over there, but thanks for staying up late with us. We appreciate you, Keiffer, and we'll talk soon, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you guys.
All right.
Good luck.
Night.
Good luck.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town.